I once had an interesting conversation with a Christian on TikTok who said to me that you're a communist. And I said, absolutely, yes I am. In fact, I'm an evangelist for communism. My mission, if you will, is to preach communism to every corner of the earth. Um, so, he responded by saying that communism is evil and that Mao Zedong was evil. So I pressed him on this and I said to him, well, what exactly about Mao Zedong was evil? And he mentioned the persecution of religion. I had to quietly, sort of, calmly inform him that was the case with the Bolsheviks under Vladimir Lenin and Joseph Stalin. That was not the case under Mao Zedong. Okay, so we have to sort of understand nuances and differences. Mao Zedong was responsible for the deaths of over 70 million people, he said. Well, I dispute that. Dispute that because there's a lot more nuance to this. There were famines, and there was a second Sino-Japanese war, and a civil war, and so on and so forth. But regardless, I cut him off. And I said to him this: was David in your Bible a prophet of God? Yes, he was. Great. Was he also an adulterer? Yes, he was. Okay, so why can't I apply that same standard to someone like Mao Zedong? Think about it. And before we go any further, I want to just say that the brand of communism that I ascribe to is anti-Bolshevik, which he never bothered to ask, I might add. The anti-authoritarian brand championed by the likes of Pyotr Kropotkin and Nestor Makhno and Emma Goldman and Rosa Luxemburg and so on and so forth. But, we can leave that. So there are many things about Mao Zedong that I agree with, many things that I disagree with. And I had to press him on this, and I said to him, what is it about Mao Zedong that you disagree with? And he said, well, I disagree with him being responsible for over 17 million deaths. Okay, granted, that's much more nuanced and complex than you're making out. We need not get into that right now, but that's a number that's sort of been inflated, and it's basically BS to in a good faith sort of way to be able to claim that he was responsible. Does he bear some degree of responsibility for those deaths in total? Absolutely. Does he bear full responsibility for at least a certain percentage of those deaths? Absolutely. But does he bear full responsibility for all of those deaths? No. No, he doesn't. Especially when you have, for example, Chiang Kai-shek blowing up the Yellow River Dam. Do you see what I'm saying? And so and Chiang Kai-shek's own scorched earth sort of tactics in order to delay Japanese advances, when you don't take into account these things, then it looks like Mao Zedong is responsible for so much death and destruction. But indeed, Mao Zedong was, as a person, deeply flawed. And I explained to him that in the same way that you can affirm that King David was both prophet and made the mistake of adultery, I can affirm myself that Mao Zedong was a brilliant theorist and in many ways a good leader, but also deeply flawed, particularly later on with the Cultural Revolution that he initiated, that he started essentially. And so that was my point, is that we need not take leaders entirely as they are. You should be essentially taking the message of your Bible, which is that people are complex but ultimately flawed. Why? Sinners. Everyone's a sinner. And that is no different in the case of the likes of Mao Zedong.